As you get older, you realize just how important it is and what the sacrifice means that so many have given. Just this morning, I took a look at this stone for the first time. I don't know how many people have gone up and looked at it closely. On the front side is a list of people who served in World War I from Swarthmore. Not who have fallen, but who have served. On the back side is a list of those who have fallen in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. It's pretty hard to believe that it took me 20 years of living in Swarthmore and being the age of 55 before I walked up and took a look at that. And then I had to ask 3 people before Bob Richardson explained how it was typical in World War I to list those who served, and then thereafter, those who fell. So to me, that's just one little example of how the older you get, the more you can appreciate this. And it's not only an appreciation for those who have fallen, and of course, those who have served, many of whom we're honored to have here today. But I think it also can help you, as the Reverend said in his poignant remarks, that we need to use Memorial Day as a way to think about what has to happen in the future. And I would suggest that we really can't decide how to engage in international relationships, as the Reverend so eloquently said it, without thinking about the impact that our decisions will have in this country and throughout the world on Memorial Day. So I think that gives us a great sense of, it gives this day a great sense of importance. And it is not merely a list of 60 names of people who we never met, who really don't mean that much to most of us, from World War I, for example, simply because of passage of time. But it makes Memorial Day that much more important that we think about a lot, and that we think about how solemn this is and how important the decisions are, so that when we come together to consecrate those who have fallen and those who have sacrificed so much, we know that it was the right thing to do. As mayor, it's a real privilege to be able to speak here at Memorial Day. And as the veterans come up, it's also going to be my privilege to shake hands with each one. And I do that in a figurative salute. I never served, so it won't be a military salute, but it will be with the heartfelt thanks and admiration of not only myself, but all those from Swarthmore. Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you, Mayor Lowe. I would like to talk about one of the 34 Swarthmore residents who gave the supreme sacrifice in our country's wars. And the information I received was through Pat O'Donnell of the Friends Historical Library at the Swarthmore College. She researched old issues of the Swarthmorean, and she collected stories of various individuals from this town who gave the supreme sacrifice in wars. And the one I'd like to talk about today is from the Korean War. His name is Isidore O. Moore. Isidore O. Moore was the son of Maurice and Mary Moore. He was born in Chestertown, Maryland in 1931. He had a younger brother named Foster. He and his family moved to 313 Brighton Avenue in Swarthmore when he was a youth. Isidore, his nickname was Zip. He was nicknamed Zip by his classmates. He graduated high school in the class of 1950. He was an active participant in the school's intramural athletic program. He played on the soccer, basketball, volleyball, track, and softball teams. And in his senior year, he was member of the school's football team. After graduation from high school, he enlisted in the U.S. Army, where he trained in the infantry at Fort Knox, Kentucky. He was home on leave in October 1950, and then he left Swarthmore, went to Seattle, Washington, then on to Japan, and on December 21st, 1950, which was his 19th birthday, he left Japan for active service in Korea. He died of wounds received in combat on April 12, 1951. That was less than 4 months in country. He was the first of 2 Swarthmore residents to die in the Korean War. I'd like to also discuss the history of the bell we have in front of the Borough Hall. The bell was purchased by the Swarthmore Fire and Protective Association in 1910 from the McShane Bell Foundry of Baltimore, Maryland. It weighs 1,075 pounds. Originally, it was rung to alert our town's volunteer firefighters. And since World War II, the bell has been tolled on the day of a firefighter's funeral, 1 ring for each year of age of that firefighter. The bell was dedicated to the citizens of Swarthmore in 1996 and hung in the canopy of Borough Hall as a symbol of volunteerism and community spirit. The bell will be rung once after the names of fallen soldiers are read for each of the 4 wars: World War I, World War II, Korean War, and the Vietnam War. And Roger Ullman, the leader of Troop 112, will assemble his scouts in front of the memorial. And we'd like to have all scouts and veterans participate in placing a flag at the memorial. And veterans are invited to form a line in front of the memorial, receive a flag and salute from a scout, and carry the flag to its place at the memorial, while the names of the Swarthmore residents who died in the wars are read. All the veterans will please come up and form a line here. Okay. I'm going to read the names of all the residents who passed away in service. In World War I, there were 5 soldiers: Harold Ainsworth, Collins Chambers, Frederick Hawthorne, M.C. Johnson, Maurice F. Whitmer. And that's the 5 who died during World War I from Swarthmore. World War II saw 25 Swarthmore residents die in that war. Webster S. Allen, Marcus C. Burgett, Wilson Burke, Paul D. Caldwell, Bruce S. Cook, George E. Davison, Milton H. Fussell III, I. John Haviland, Vernon Henderson, Hugh A. Hilferty, Daniel P. Johnson, Louis J. Koch, Jr., Alfred W. Larson, Harry S. McMillan, Malcolm Nain, Winthrop W. Mellon, Jr., Clarence E. Myers, Harry L. Miller, Jr., John M. Ogden, Jr., Boyd W. Stauffer, John H. Stokes, Jr., Louis J. Stork, William L. Thorpe, Walter H. Wernher, and Joseph M. Yeomans. They are the 25 names of Swarthmore residents killed in World War II. The Korean conflict saw 2 residents killed. Louis J. Stewart Jr., Isidore O. Moore. They're the 2 names killed in the Korean conflict. The Vietnam War saw 2 more killed in that conflict. Davis Moscript and George Hamilton. They were the 2 killed in the Vietnam War. Thank you. We'll now have the benediction by Reverend Russell Atkinson. I stand corrected. I'm on the wrong page. We're going to have Reverend Russell Atkinson discuss his trip to Normandy, France, which he took recently.
Same person, a different job. Barbara and I were fortunate enough to have been living in France last year at this time, and we had an opportunity while we were there to visit places that were of merit, places that were important. During the Normandy campaign of 1944, 2 million plus Americans went in the armed forces over to Europe just for that particular invasion. It was an enormous undertaking, one that was incomprehensible, really, the scale, the magnitude of it. This reflection that I'm about to offer is not really fit to this occasion. It's a reflection I had simply from being in Normandy, visiting Omaha Beach on the 6th of June last year. I do, however, offer it in remembrance of this day, in gratitude for those who went to war and didn't come home. Went the day well. We died and never knew. But well or ill, freedom. We died for you. Went the day well. In Normandy this weekend, everything is D-Day crazy. The bar next to the boulangerie was serving a group of 101st U.S. Airborne reenactors on Friday afternoon who chatted away merrily in French, none of them likely able to utter a convincingly Yank Geronimo. The Royal British Legion organized a service of remembrance for fallen Allied comrades at the cathedral on Monday, a unique blessing for Barbara and me as we were able to sing hymns in English in church for the first time since we left Swarthmore. Glenn Miller music features in many a celebration playlist for the next few days. I'm as likely to see a Canadian flag as a French tricolor when I walk around the streets of Bayeux. I can't properly describe the atmosphere in this charming medieval town. It is so uneven. It is a carnival, a time of celebration, and a time of immense thanksgiving for deliverance, while at the same time it is profoundly sad. The population of Normandy are entirely kind and gracious to the dwindling numbers of old soldiers retracing the paths of their youth, and the swarms of American, British, Canadian, and German tourists who come here each year to try to comprehend something of the enormous events that took place here 67 summers ago. I don't know how successful anyone might be at doing that. I remember a few years ago hearing a veteran of the Omaha beach landing interviewed on the radio concerning the stark realism of Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan. While he was quite complimentary about the effort and attention to detail in the film, he said that a movie audience couldn't get an accurate feeling for the reality unless someone up front started spraying them with machine gun bullets as the lights went down. Normandy is some of the most beautiful countryside I have ever seen, and yet it is impossible to move around in Normandy without seeing the results of the Second World War. Barbara and I have added to our kitchen on the cheap by doing some flea market shopping here since we arrived. Among the pots and pans and secondhand DVDs and gently used children's clothing, bargain hunters can also find spent shell casings, jerry cans, and ammunition boxes from 1944. Any American who has visited Normandy will, I hope, have seen the great cemetery above Omaha Beach at Colville-sur-Mer. There, more than 12,000 monuments, more than 12,000 names are listed of Americans who fell in the Normandy campaign. There are approximately 20 British Commonwealth cemeteries, each smaller than the American one, but generally by their location they describe where the fighting was costliest for the other Allied nations. And the few German cemeteries, they are enormous and stark. Here you will see a plaque remembering a village that was destroyed. There, a sign that shows where a town was moved because it was too difficult to rebuild in the original site. The city of Caen has almost no buildings that remain that were built before the war. Every village church has memorials to civilian casualties of the fighting in 1944. Some for those who were deported and died in concentration camps, and still others to members of the resistance, and others to the fallen of the French army that greatly expanded late in 1944. In 1944, tens of thousands
died in Normandy, and millions had their lives cruelly changed by the loss of sight, limb, minds, or loved ones. It is worth wondering from time to time whether such a great and utter tragedy was worth it. I don't know whether most of us spend any time thinking carefully about what particular aspects of Nazism do not fit with our understanding of acceptable government or social order. The crosses and memorials can only describe the sacrifice and are powerless to force the living to do anything. It remains for us to make something better of the opportunity we have so dearly been given.
Very insightful.
Thank you very much, Reverend, and I believe Normandy was worth it. I'd like to, as a place in the world I'd like to go see and visit. We're now going to have Reverend Atkinson again give you the benediction.
We have this debt to pay. We have a solemn contract that there are those who go, and if they fall, then we have a debt of honor. Today, we've discharged that responsibility in one way, and I offer you another way to enjoy the day and to love your families, and to give thanks, and try to make things better. Let us pray. Help us, God, all our days to give thanks and to make a better day. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. We'll now have silent prayer. All of you are invited to join in the march to East Lawn Cemetery with police and fire honor guards. At the cemetery, veterans' graves will be decorated by the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. Return to the borough can be done by walking or riding on the fire trucks. This concludes our program. Thank you.
Good to see you. Hey! Catch up with Carol here.
Thank you.